Let's look at a few examples of the mechanics of completing the square. When we complete the square, our primary focus is going to be given to the linear term in a quadratic expression. It's based off of this term that we will complete the square. And the process for completing the square is pretty simple. We take this coefficient, in this case the b, and in this case a 9, and we divide that coefficient by 2. After we divide that coefficient by 2, we then square that coefficient to create the term that will be added to the end of the expression in order to complete the square. X squared plus 9x plus 81 over 4. If done correctly, we should be able to rewrite this trinomial expression in its factored form. X plus 9 over 2 squared. You should also notice that this term right here, 9 over 2, the division by 2 before you squared it to create the final term, that term right there is also the term that should show up in the factored form at the end. Now, if you want to convince yourself that we did this correctly, it's just a matter of multiplying out that product that we wrote on the very last line. X squared plus 9 over 2x plus another 9 over 2x plus 81 over 4. 9 over 2x plus 9 over 2x is 9x. We have our first x squared term, and we have our 81 over 4 term. So we got back to where we started. Now, normally, completing the square will be used in the context of solving equations. So we're going to have a way then of balancing the fact that we just added a term to the expression. Obviously, this expression and this expression do not have the same value. But here we're just looking at the process. So let's try another one, repeating the same exact process again. We focus our attention on the linear term, namely the coefficient of the linear term. Our coefficient of our linear term is negative 3/7. We're going to divide that by 2, and we're going to square it. Now, to clean up the inside of that parentheses a little bit, negative 3 over 14 squared gives us a factor of 9 over 196. Remember, because these are perfect squares, we're okay if the linear term has a negative sign in front of it. But if we go through this step of completing the square correctly, our final term, that constant term at the end, should always be positive. And it's this square right here that makes that happen. Factoring this final expression, we have x minus 3/14 squared. And that would be the finished version of completing the square. Again, if we want to check to make sure that we did it correctly, we can always multiply it back out and check that we create the correct middle term and the correct constant term through the multiplications and the simplifying that comes from that product. And we do. Now again, no one is suggesting that this expression is equivalent to that expression. I added a 9/196 at the end of it. It can't possibly be the same thing. But that doesn't change the fact that we're going to use this process to help us solve equations. And we're going to have ways of balancing the fact that we're just adding an extra term in that goes beyond just, let's just practice a skill. That extra term is going to matter when we solve the equations, and it's going to matter where we put it and how we use it.